My name's Ethan, and the night before my wedding, I learned that the woman I loved, the one I thought I knew better than anyone, had been living a lie so deep it shattered everything I believed about us. We had spent 2 years building what I thought was a future. The house we were about to move into, the church booked for our ceremony in Colorado Springs, and the tiny details she obsessed over. The lavender suits, the candles, the playlist she curated herself. Tomorrow was supposed to be perfect. Instead, that night, perfection died quietly on a cabin porch under a sky full of stars. It started with a silence that didn't belong. We were sitting together outside her parents' cabin the night before our families would gather to celebrate us. The air was cold, scented with pine and rain. She was quiet, too quiet, her eyes far away. I thought it was nerves, but when she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that made the world stop. "Ethan," she said, "there's something I need to tell you before we get married." My heart sank. I told her to go on, already feeling my stomach twist. She looked down, fidgeting with her engagement ring, and said, "You're not the first man I planned this with." For a moment I laughed, thinking she was joking, some odd pre-wedding confession meant to tease. But her eyes didn't move, and that smile I knew so well never appeared. She was serious. "What do you mean?" I asked, my throat suddenly dry. She took a shaky breath. "Before you, there was someone else. His name was Ryan. We were engaged. We planned everything. The church, the colors, even the vows. It all fell apart, and when I met you, I wanted to forget it ever happened. So I kept it buried. But as we get closer to tomorrow, I can't pretend anymore. You deserve the truth." The truth? It didn't feel like truth, it felt like betrayal. Like I was standing inside a replica of someone else's dream. My mind raced. Every moment I'd called ours, the venue she loved, the decor she insisted on, the handwritten vows she swore came from her heart, was borrowed from a life she'd lived before me. I asked why she'd never told me. Her answer was a whisper that cut deeper than any scream. "Because I didn't want you to see me as broken." I sat there staring at her, the wind tugging at her hair, the night swallowing our silence. All I could think about was how easily she had rebuilt her fantasy, how I had unknowingly walked into someone else's story and called it love. "So what else didn't you tell me?" I asked. Her face froze. She hesitated. "Ryan left because I lied about something. Something small. I just don't want that to happen again." "What did you lie about?" I demanded. She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It doesn't matter now." But it did. It mattered more than anything. Because if she could hide a whole engagement, what else had she erased from her past? I stood up, needing air, needing distance. Inside the cabin, my wedding tux hung by the window, catching the glow of the moon. The ring I had chosen for her lay in its velvet box, a promise now poisoned. My phone buzzed with messages, from friends, from family, from my best man checking on rehearsal. I didn't reply. I just stared out at the woman I thought I knew, crying softly on the porch, and felt something inside me fracture. That night, sleep never came. I sat by the window, watching dawn creep across the mountains, realizing that everything I'd built was standing on someone else's ashes. And by the time the sun rose, I had already made up my mind. Tomorrow, there would still be a wedding, but not the one anyone expected.
The morning light crept through the curtains, soft and gold, pretending nothing was wrong while my entire world was collapsing quietly inside me. The house smelled like coffee and lavender candles, My mother was laughing in the kitchen with her sisters, and outside I could hear the echo of someone setting up chairs near the garden arch where we were supposed to say our vows. I looked at myself in the mirror, black circles under my eyes, face pale, and a half smile that didn't belong to me. My phone buzzed again, this time with her message. "Can we talk before everyone arrives?" I didn't reply. I already knew that if I saw her again before the ceremony, I'd break, and I couldn't let her see me break. Instead, I walked out to the car, drove to the lake near the cabin, and stared at the reflection of the mountains dancing over the still water. The wind was cold, biting, but it kept me awake. Every sound reminded me that in a few hours, people would gather, music would play, and everyone would expect me to say yes to forever. But how could I say yes to someone who rehearsed our love with another man? My mind was a storm of images, her laughter, her confessions, that name Ryan echoing like thunder. It wasn't jealousy, it was humiliation. I was living in the ghost of a love story that wasn't mine. I opened my phone and scrolled through our old photos, and suddenly things started to click. That hiking trip in Utah where she cried by the waterfall, she said it reminded her of how things could have been. The way she flinched when I suggested we write our own vows. The random phone call she took once and stepped outside, whispering. I had ignored all the signs because I wanted peace, not truth. But the truth had found me anyway. I drove back just before noon. Guests were arriving, laughter filled the yard, and I could see her from a distance, standing near the floral arch, pretending everything was perfect. Our eyes met for a second, and I saw fear in hers, the kind that comes when lies begin to collapse. My best man, Jordan, walked up, clapping me on the shoulder. "You ready, man?" I nodded, but the word felt like a stone in my throat. As we stood in that small room waiting for the ceremony to start, I slipped the ring into my pocket and made a choice. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to let the truth reveal itself in the quietest, most unforgettable way possible. I took a deep breath as the music began. She walked down the aisle, glowing, every eye on her, every heart expecting a fairy tale. When she reached me, she smiled, whispering, "You look nervous." I whispered back, "You have no idea." The priest began the ceremony, words floating through the air like distant bells, but my mind was elsewhere, on the moment I would finally say what needed to be said. When it came time for vows, she went first. Her voice trembled, but she spoke beautifully about love, forgiveness, and second chances. Everyone sighed, some even wiped tears. Then it was my turn. I looked at her, at the crowd, at the ring in my hand, and felt the silence tighten. "Before I make my vow," I began slowly, "I need to share a truth. Because love without truth is nothing more than a performance." Her face froze, the color draining instantly, and I knew this was the moment her perfect script was about to burn.
The air turned heavy the moment those words left my mouth, like the entire garden suddenly realized this wasn't going to be the wedding they came for. A murmur rippled through the crowd, the music died, and all eyes shifted from the priest to me. She looked at me with trembling lips, her hand frozen mid-air as if still waiting for the ring that I now held like a weapon of truth. "2 nights ago," I said, voice steady but heart racing, "I found out something that broke me. My fiancée confessed that I'm not the first man she planned this wedding with, that this same ceremony, this same dream was once built for someone else." A gasp cut through the silence, followed by whispers that grew like wildfire. Her mother's face turned pale, her father looked confused, and she reached out, whispering my name, "Ethan, please don't do this here." But it was too late. I had spent a sleepless night deciding whether to carry her secret like a coffin or bury it in the open. "I'm not saying this to humiliate you," I said, my voice shaking now, "but because I can't start a marriage built on lies. You had every chance to tell me the truth before we invited all these people, before you promised forever again." She shook her head, tears spilling. "I told you because I didn't want to lie anymore." "No," I said quietly. "You told me because guilt finally caught up to you." The priest stepped back, awkward and pale, and someone in the front row muttered, "Oh my God." I looked around at the guests, faces twisted between shock and pity. I love this woman, but I can't marry a version of her that was created for someone else. Maybe she can start over, but not with me. Not like this. Her knees buckled, and Jordan, my best man, caught her before she fell. My mother gasped, half rising, unsure whether to comfort her or drag me away. My chest felt like it was tearing open, but I didn't move. I placed the ring on the podium, nodded once to the priest, and said, "The ceremony is over." Then I walked away. Cameras flashed, someone called my name, but the world was already fading into white noise. I stepped out of the garden and into the parking lot, the sunlight harsh against my face, the cheers that should have been ours now replaced by stunned silence behind me. My phone kept buzzing. Calls, messages, chaos, but I ignored it all. I got into my car, slammed the door, and finally let myself breathe. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding, but beneath the pain, there was clarity. I had done the only thing that could save me from a lifetime of pretending. As I drove away, the image of her collapsing in that white dress haunted me, yet somewhere deep down, I knew she had needed that moment too. Because truth, no matter how brutal, is the only way to kill a lie that's been living too long. The sound of the door slamming behind me echoed louder than the vows that never got spoken. And as I drove down the winding road away from the venue, it felt like every mile was peeling away a layer of pain. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, calls from my mother, texts from friends, even one from her sister begging me to come back, but I couldn't. I needed distance, silence, a place where the noise of betrayal couldn't reach me. I stopped at a rest station an hour away, parked, and just sat there, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look like a groom who escaped a wedding. I looked like a man who'd buried his future. Part of me wondered if I'd overreacted, if maybe I should have let her explain more, but then I remembered her eyes that night. The guilt, the hesitation, the lies dressed as love, and I knew there was nothing left to save. That evening, the story spread faster than I imagined. A friend sent me screenshots of social media posts, photos of guests whispering, hashtags already forming like vultures over what used to be my life. She tried to call me dozens of times, each voicemail more desperate than the last. "Ethan, please, it wasn't what you think. Ryan meant nothing. It's you I wanted all along. Please don't let one mistake ruin us." But it wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern, a performance that had run too long. I spent the next few days at my friend Jordan's apartment, barely eating, barely sleeping, just replaying everything. He didn't say much, just handed me a beer one night and said, "You did what most people are too scared to do. You stopped pretending." That sentence hit me hard, because deep down I knew he was right. I'd been in love with an illusion, and the hardest part wasn't losing her. It was realizing she'd never really been mine to begin with. Then, one morning, a message arrived that froze me again. It wasn't from her. It was from a man named Ryan. The subject line read, "I think we need to talk about Emily." When I opened that email, my hands trembled. It was short, polite, and terrifyingly calm. "Ethan, you don't know me, but you should. My name is Ryan. I'm the man Emily was once engaged to. I saw what happened online, and I need you to know the truth about why I left her. It's not what she told you." I read it twice, 3 times. My heartbeat thudding louder with every word. There was an address at the bottom, a coffee shop in downtown Denver, and a note. "If you want closure, meet me. Bring nothing but honesty."
Against every instinct, I went. The next afternoon, I sat in that cafe surrounded by the smell of roasted beans and murmured conversations. Ryan was already there, a tall man, mid-30s, wearing a navy jacket and the kind of tired eyes that only heartbreak could carve. He didn't look angry, just sad. "You look like you didn't sleep," he said as I sat. "I didn't," I replied. We sat in silence for a few seconds before he spoke again. "She told you I left because she lied about something small, right?" I nodded. He gave a bitter laugh. "Small? She told me she'd lost her job and was struggling. That part was true. But what she didn't tell me was that she'd been using my name to take out credit cards. By the time I found out, she'd racked up $20,000 in debt under my account. I didn't press charges. I just walked away." I felt my stomach twist. "And she never mentioned it again?" I asked. He shook his head. "Emily's not evil. She's just terrified of being alone. When she met you, she built the same fantasy again. The same decorations, the same songs, the same church. She even reused the same vows she wrote for me." The words burned. It was like hearing my own love story being recycled line by line. "I thought maybe she changed," he said, sipping his coffee. "But people don't change until they face what they've done, and she never has." I leaned back, breath shallow. Everything suddenly made sense. The rehearsed gestures, the over-perfect plans, the strange emptiness beneath her affection. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked quietly. He sighed. "Because I don't want you to hate her. I just want you to understand her. You were the second chance she didn't deserve yet." He slid a small envelope across the table. Inside were 2 old photos. One of him and Emily at the same church where our wedding had been set, and another of her holding the same bouquet she'd ordered again for mine. I stared at the images, the ghosts of a life replaying like déjà vu. When I looked up, Ryan was already standing. "She'll try to contact you again. If you still love her from a distance. It's the only way it won't destroy you too." And then he left, just like that, leaving me with nothing but the truth, and 2 photographs that proved my entire future had been someone else's rerun. I sat in my car outside that cafe for what felt like hours, the photos trembling in my hands like pieces of someone else's unfinished story. The sky had turned gray, and the first drops of rain began to fall, blurring the city lights into smudges of gold and silver. I didn't cry. I couldn't. There was nothing left to grieve, only a strange emptiness that comes when you finally stop fighting the truth. By the time I drove back to the cabin where it had all started, the rain had turned into a storm. The garden was empty now, the flowers wilted, the chairs gone, the arch that once framed our vows leaning slightly as if exhausted from pretending. I parked, stepped out, and found her sitting on the porch exactly where she had confessed that night. She looked smaller somehow, her wedding dress traded for a gray hoodie and bare feet pressed against the wooden floor. She turned when she heard me, her eyes swollen and red. "I didn't think you'd come back," she whispered. I didn't answer right away, I just stood there, the sound of rain filling the silence between us. "Ryan emailed me," I said finally. Her face went pale. "He told me everything." She didn't deny it this time. She just looked down, her voice breaking. "I know I'm broken, Ethan. I didn't mean to make you part of my mess. I just wanted to feel loved again." I exhaled slowly, the anger gone, replaced by something colder, understanding. "You could have told me the truth," I said softly. "I would have respected you for it. But instead you built another lie and called it love." Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I wanted to believe it too." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The storm raged, wind tearing through the trees, thunder rolling across the sky. I walked to the edge of the porch, took off the ring I still carried in my pocket, and placed it on the railing. "Keep it," I said, "not as a memory, but as a reminder. Don't build the same dream twice." She reached for it, her hands trembling, but I was already walking away. Each step felt lighter, though my chest ached with a hollow kind of peace. As I drove off into the storm, lightning lit the road ahead, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to freedom. I didn't know what waited next. Maybe loneliness, maybe healing, but I knew one thing for sure. I had loved her honestly, and that was enough. Some endings don't need revenge or closure, they just need truth, no matter how late it arrives. And that night, as the storm faded and dawn began to rise, I finally understood that sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about having the strength to walk away when the story no longer belongs to you.